Trust is like a mirror. You can't scratch it to see if it breaks, because the moment you do, you've already ruined the reflection. Caelum Roth had everything: the billions, the empire, the respect of men who controlled nations. And Elowen, a wife who looked at him like he hung the moon. But Caleum didn't see devotion when he looked into those warm hazel eyes. He saw a liability, a beautiful, dangerous variable in his perfectly calculated life. He saw a woman waiting to cash out, so he made the deadliest mistake a powerful man can make. He sat across from Tavian Blackwell, his best friend, his business partner, the only person he'd ever called brother, and slid a blank check across the mahogany table. "Test her," Caleum said, voice cold as the winter rain pelting the penthouse windows. "Seduce my wife. Prove she's a gold digger." Tavian stared at the check. Then he looked at the man he thought he knew. And for the first time in 15 years of friendship, Tavian saw a stranger. This was how the poison was planted. Before we begin, just know this story isn't about villains and heroes. It's about the moments that break people in ways no one else can see. If you love stories that hurt, heal, and stay with you long after the video ends, you might want to subscribe, because this channel tells the kind of stories your heart doesn't forget. Now, let me tell you how her life fell apart. It started 3 months earlier, at a charity gala where Manhattan's elite gathered like vultures in designer gowns. Caelum's mother, Vivian Roth, cornered him by the champagne fountain. "She's very good at playing the part," Vivian said, her diamond necklace catching the light. The sweet, humble girl. But darling, women like that always have an angle. Caleum watched Elowen across the room, laughing with genuine joy at something an elderly donor was saying. She wore the same dress she'd worn to 3 other events. She always did that, recycled her wardrobe, sent her designer gifts to charity, lived like she was still the bookstore clerk he'd married 5 years ago. "She loves me, Mother." Does she? Or does she love what you can give her? The seed was planted, and poison, once introduced, spreads. His business associates whispered over cigars. "Beautiful wife. Very fortunate for her." His lawyer mentioned prenups during casual conversation. "Just a safety measure, Caleum. Smart men protect themselves." His cousin joked at a family dinner. "Found herself a billionaire. That's the dream, isn't it?" Each comment was a grain of sand, individually harmless. Together, they built a mountain between Caleum and the woman who loved him. He started watching her differently. When she kissed him goodbye, he wondered if she was thinking about his net worth. When she asked about his day, he heard calculation instead of care. When she touched his hand across the dinner table, he felt the weight of suspicion instead of warmth. And Elowen, gentle, intuitive Elowen, felt the shift. She just didn't understand it. "Is something wrong?" she asked one night, her voice small. They were in their bedroom, the city glittering below them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Caleum stood at those windows, his back to her. "Nothing's wrong. You've been distant for weeks now." "I've been busy." "Caleum, please, talk to me." He turned then, and the look in his eyes made her stomach drop. It wasn't anger. It was suspicion, like she was a problem to be solved. "I'm fine, Elowen. Go to sleep." She did, but she cried first, quietly, so he wouldn't hear. What she didn't know was that Caleum heard everything, and instead of feeling guilty, he felt validated. "See? She's manipulating you with tears." The poison had reached his heart. By the time Tavian walked into that room, the test had already begun. Tavian Blackwell knew something was wrong the moment Caleum called the meeting. Not at the office, not during business hours. at Caelim's private club, in a room where deals died and empires crumbled. Tavian arrived in the rain, his coat dripping as he took the seat across from his oldest friend. They'd built Roth Tech together, turned a startup into an empire worth $40 billion. They'd been roommates at Harvard, best men at each other's weddings, brothers. So when Caelum slid that check across the table, Tavian's world tilted. "What is this? A job offer?" Tavian looked at the amount. 7 figures. "You want to pay me $1 million?" To test Elowen. Silence. Rain drummed against the windows. Tavian's voice came out very quiet. "Explain." And Caleum did. Every poisoned word, every suspicion, every fear that his wife was a beautiful actress, waiting for the right moment to take half of everything. "I need to know if she's real," Caleum said, "and you're the only one I trust to find out." "You want me to seduce your wife?" "I want you to see if she can be seduced." Tavian pushed the check back. "No." "Tavian, absolutely not. This is insane." Caleum's jaw tightened. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The stakes." "Elowen loves you." Tavian's voice cracked with disbelief. "She's the only real thing in your life, Caleum. The only person who gives a damn about you and not your money. And you want to destroy that?" "I want to protect myself. By breaking the heart of the woman who worships you?" Tavian stood, his chair scraping back. "This isn't protection. This is cruelty." Caleum stood too. "I'm asking you as my friend." "Friends, don't ask this." The silence stretched. Then Caleum picked up the check and slid it back across the table. "If you won't do it out of loyalty," Caleum said softly, "do it for the money." Those words landed like a bullet. Tavian stared at the man he'd called brother. "You think that's all our friendship is worth? A paycheck? I think you'll do what you're paid to do. You always have." Something died in that room. Not just friendship, but trust, respect, everything that had mattered. Tavian looked at the check, then at Caleum. And he thought, if you already see me as a traitor, if gold is all you think I'm worth, then I'll take your gold. But not to destroy her, to save her from you. Tavian picked up the check. Caleum smiled, triumphant. He had no idea what he'd just done. And this was where kindness became the most dangerous thing of all. Elowen was dying slowly. Not physically, but the woman who'd married Caelum Roth 5 years ago. The one who believed in love and second chances and the goodness of people. She was fading. Her husband barely looked at her anymore. He worked 18-hour days, slept in his office, attended events without her. When they were together, he was distant, cold, like she was a stranger in his home. She tried everything. She cooked his favorite meals. He ate in his study. She planned date nights. He canceled them. She wore the lingerie he'd once loved. He came to bed after she'd fallen asleep. Elowen started to believe she was the problem. Maybe she wasn't smart enough, sophisticated enough, beautiful enough. Maybe she'd never been enough. So when Tavian Blackwell showed up at her door on a rainy Tuesday with coffee and an apology, Elowen almost cried from the shock of basic human kindness. "Caleum asked me to check on you," Tavian lied smoothly. "He's buried with the merger." She knew Caleum hadn't asked, but she was so starved for warmth that she let Tavian in anyway. They sat in the living room, the one Elowen had decorated herself, filling it with books and plants and warmth that Caleum never noticed. "How are you, Elowen?" Really, no one had asked her that in months. "I'm fine." Tavian's dark eyes were too knowing. "You're a terrible liar." And somehow, that broke her. She cried, not delicate tears, but the kind of crying that comes from months of being invisible. Tavian didn't touch her. He just sat there, present and patient, while she fell apart. "I don't know what I did wrong," she whispered. "I don't know how to fix it." "You didn't do anything wrong. Then why does he hate me?" Tavian's chest tightened. Because this was supposed to be a test, a performance. But Elowen wasn't acting. She was breaking. And Caleum, his best friend, his brother, had done this to her. "He doesn't hate you," Tavian said quietly. "He doesn't love me either. Not anymore. He never deserved you." The thought came unbidden. Dangerous. True. None of them could feel it yet, but everything was already falling. It happened slowly. Then, all at once, Tavian started visiting regularly, always with an excuse, dropping off documents, checking on renovations, just in the neighborhood. Elowen knew what he was doing. He was filling the void her husband had left. And God help her, she let him. Because Tavian saw her. He asked about the book she was reading, remembered she took her coffee with oat milk, noticed when she got her hair trimmed, all the small things Caleum used to do before the poison. They went to museums, took walks in Central Park, had long conversations about art and philosophy and dreams deferred. And Elowen felt herself coming back to life. She didn't love Tavian. She loved being seen again. But Tavian fell, hard and completely. He fell for the way she laughed, genuine and unguarded, for how she cried at sad movies and argued passionately about books, and treated waiters with more respect than billionaires. He fell for who she was when no one was using her. And he hated himself for it. Because this started as a lie. Because she was his best friend's wife. Because he was betraying everyone, including himself. One night, 3 months into the test, they were in Elowen's home library. She was curled on the couch, reading. Tavian sat across from her, pretending to work on his laptop. But really, he was just watching her, memorizing the way lamplight caught in her hair. She looked up, caught him staring. What? He should have lied. Instead, he told the truth. "You deserve better than this." Better than what? Than being alone in a marriage. Elowen's eyes filled with tears. "I love him, Tavian. I know. He's just lost right now. Elowen, he'll come back to me. I know he will." Tavian wanted to tell her everything. That Caleum had hired him. That this was all a test. That her husband's paranoia had poisoned their marriage beyond repair. But he couldn't. Because the truth would destroy her. And he loved her too much to be the one to do it. So he kept the secret. And hated Caleum more every day. But that night, when Tavian left, he sat in his car for an hour, hands gripping the steering wheel, thinking about what he'd become. A liar, a traitor, a man betraying his best friend, but also a man who couldn't watch an innocent woman break under the weight of unfounded suspicion. He called Caleum. "It needs to end." "What?" "This test. It's been 3 months, Caleum." "She's loyal. She loves you. End this." "Has she made a move on you?" "No. She talks about you constantly, defends you, believes you're just stressed." Silence. "She's good," Caleum said finally. "Really good at playing the long game." "She's not playing anything. Keep going." "Caleum, I said keep going. I need to be sure." The line went dead, and Tavian realized something horrifying. Caleum didn't want proof of her innocence. He wanted proof of her guilt. And he'd keep testing until he manufactured it. What Caleum was about to see would change the way he saw her forever. Caleum watched the security footage in his office. He'd had cameras installed in Elowen's favorite rooms. Audio, too. He told himself it was necessary. Protection. Really, It was obsession. He watched Tavian make his wife laugh, watched her lean into conversations, eyes bright with life Caleum hadn't seen in months. Watched her touch Tavian's hand when she made a point. Nothing inappropriate, nothing sexual, just connection. And it felt like betrayal anyway. But there was something else on those recordings, something Caleum hadn't expected. Elowen, alone in the library, crying. Elowen, staring at their wedding photo with a longing that gutted him. Elowen, whispering to herself, "What did I do wrong? What did I do?" And in those moments, when she thought no one was watching, Caleum saw the truth. She wasn't acting. She was grieving. Grieving a husband who'd abandoned her emotionally while she desperately tried to hold them together. His phone buzzed. A text from Tavian. "She's loyal, Caleum. This test needs to end." Caleum stared at the message. Then at the frozen frame on his screen, Elowen smiling at Tavian like he'd given her the world. She never smiled at Caleum like that anymore. And whose fault was that? The thought came and went, too dangerous to entertain. Because if he admitted the truth, that he'd created this distance, that his paranoia had pushed her away, then everything he'd done was monstrously unjust. So he did what wounded men do. He doubled down. Caleum deleted the message and made a decision that would destroy everything. The night meant to celebrate their love became the night it was executed. Their 5th anniversary gala was supposed to be a celebration. Caleum had rented out the plaza, invited 500 of Manhattan's most powerful. Elowen wore emerald green, Caleum's favorite color. She'd bought it specifically for tonight, spending her own money from the small trust her grandmother had left her. She thought maybe, finally, he was coming back to her. He'd been almost warm these past few days, had actually kissed her goodbye that morning, had whispered, "You look beautiful." She didn't know it was the kiss of Judas. The evening started beautifully. Champagne, music, Elowen on Caleum's arm, playing the perfect wife. For a few hours, she let herself believe they were okay, that whatever darkness had infected their marriage was finally lifting. She even danced with him. Caleum held her close, and for a moment, just a moment, she felt like the girl he'd fallen in love with. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. His arms tightened around her, but he didn't say it back. She saw Tavian across the room and smiled. He didn't smile back. He looked terrified. Then Caleum stepped onto the stage. The music stopped. 500 faces turned toward him. "Thank you all for coming," Caleum said, his voice smooth. "5 years ago, I married the woman of my dreams." Elowen's heart swelled. "I thought I knew her, thought I could trust her." The warmth died. But in this world, trust is a luxury. So I did what any smart man would do. He snapped his fingers. The screens around the ballroom lit up, and Elowen's face appeared. It took her a moment to understand what she was seeing. Then she recognized the library. Her library. The footage was from last week. Her voice, soft and broken, filled the ballroom. "I love him, Tavian, but I'm so alone." Tavian's response, "You deserve better than this." Her, crying, "I don't know how to reach him anymore." Tavian, gentle, "Maybe you're not supposed to." More footage played. Them at a museum, talking about a painting. Them in a coffee shop, sharing a table. Them in the park, walking side by side. Every innocent moment weaponized, made to look like something it wasn't. The screen went black. 500 people stared at Elowen. She couldn't breathe. The emerald dress suddenly felt like a shroud. Caleum descended the stage, pulled an envelope from his jacket, and placed it in her trembling hands. Divorce papers, he said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. You failed my test. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Elowen looked at the envelope, at her husband's cold eyes, and then at Tavian, who stood frozen, his face shattered. This was a test? Her voice barely worked. I hired Tavian to seduce you, to see if you could be bought. We never, but you wanted to, didn't you? Caelum's voice was cruel. You found comfort in another man's arms while wearing my ring. He was my friend. He was a test you failed. The cruelty in his voice broke her. She looked at Tavian. You knew? This whole time? Tavian moved toward her. Elowen, don't. She backed away, the envelope crumpling in her fist. Don't you dare. She just wants out. Caleum stared at the phone. Find her. Mr. Roth? Find her, now. But Elowen had learned from the best. She'd watched Caleum build an empire through strategy and secrets, and she used every trick against him. Boner phone, cash only, stayed with a friend from her bookstore days, someone Caleum had never bothered to meet because she wasn't important enough. She was a ghost, and Caleum was haunted. He went to their penthouse and found it exactly as she'd left it, except emptier. Her books were gone from the shelves, her plants from the terrace, her favorite mug from the kitchen. She'd erased herself from his life with surgical precision and left behind only the things he'd bought her, a museum of his own guilt. That's when the begging finally started. Tavian found her first. It took him 6 weeks. 6 weeks of hiring investigators, calling in favors, following dead ends. He found her in Brooklyn, working at a small, independent bookstore that smelled like coffee and old paper. She looked different, thinner, quieter, hair cut short. She'd chopped off the long waves Caleum had loved, but there was steel in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The bell chimed as he entered. She looked up from the register, and her face went carefully blank. We're closing soon, she said. Elowen, I go by El now. A knife to his chest. Please, just 5 minutes. You had months of minutes. All of them were lies. Not all of them. His voice cracked. God, Elowen, not all of them. She came around the counter, arms crossed, a defensive wall he'd helped build. You were paid to seduce me. Yes. You befriended me under false pretenses. Yes. You let me trust you, confide in you, while you were reporting back to my husband. I never reported anything. I told Caleum you were loyal, over and over. But you didn't tell me. Her voice broke. You let me think I was losing my mind, that Caleum's coldness was my fault, when all along you knew what he was doing. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? By pretending to be my friend? It stopped being pretend. The words burst out. Somewhere between the coffee and the museums and the conversations, it became real. You became real. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She wiped them away angrily. When, she whispered, when did you decide to betray him instead of me? The first day, when you cried and said you didn't know what you'd done wrong. Tavian's hands shook. I saw what he was doing to you, and I couldn't. I wouldn't be part of destroying someone that good. So you destroyed me gently instead. I fell in love with you. The confession hung in the air. I know I have no right. I know I'm complicit in your pain. But Elowen, I fell in love with you, and I have spent every day since that gala hating myself for hurting you. She studied him, looking for the lie, but his eyes were raw with truth. I don't forgive you. I know. I may never forgive you. I know. But I don't hate you either, and I don't know if that's worse. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Tavian wanted to touch her, comfort her, but he'd lost that right. I resigned from Rothtech, he said quietly. Signed over my shares to charity. I'm launching the project Caelum buried, the one that could have changed everything. She didn't respond. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking, let me prove I'm more than the worst thing I've ever done. Elle looked at him over her shoulder. I need time. I'll wait. I might never be ready. I'll still wait. She nodded slowly. And Tavian left before he broke down. Because she didn't slam the door. She didn't curse him. She just asked for time. And that was more than he deserved. Now it was Caelum's turn to suffer. Caelum's world crumbled methodically. First, the business partners. Half of them sided with Tavian. The man with integrity who'd walked away from billions for love. Then, the media. The anniversary gala footage leaked. Every major outlet ran with it. Billionaire's cruel test destroys marriage. Power broker's paranoia costs him everything. When trust became weaponized, the Caelum Roth story. His reputation, built over decades, shattered in weeks. Social media was merciless. Thousands of comments dissecting his choices, calling him abusive, cruel, a cautionary tale. Stock prices dropped. Investors pulled out. Rothtech's valuation plummeted by billions. But worse than all of it, the silence. Elowen's absence was a presence. He saw her everywhere. In the coffee mug she'd left behind, the books on her nightstand, the garden she'd planted on their terrace. He'd torn out the surveillance equipment himself, smashed every camera, every microphone. Evidence of his paranoia, his sickness. 3 months after the gala, his mother visited. Vivian Roth, imperious and cold, stood in his penthouse and looked at her son, really looked at him. And what she saw made her ashamed. You're a fool, she said. You're the one who warned me about her. And you're the one who destroyed the only good thing in your life because you listened to a bitter old woman. She set down her champagne. I was wrong about Elowen. She loved you. And you killed that love with suspicion and cruelty. She could have been. She was a bookstore clerk who married you when you were worth a fraction of what you are now. She never stent your money, never flaunted your name, never used you for access. Vivian's voice turned sharp. The gold digger was your paranoia, Caleum, not her. She moved toward the door, then stopped. I poisoned you against her because I was jealous. Because she made you happy in a way I never could. Because she was everything I wasn't. Warm, and genuine, and kind. Caleum stared at his mother. And you, Vivian continued, you took that poison willingly. You wanted to believe the worst because believing the best required vulnerability, required trust. Mother, I hope you learn to live with what you've done, because that girl deserved better than both of us. She left him with that, and Caleum stood in the center of his empty penthouse, surrounded by everything he'd protected, and nothing that mattered. While one man was losing everything, 2 others were building something new. 6 months after the gala, Tavian launched Blackwell Innovations, the technology Caleum had buried. AI systems for sustainable energy became the foundation. He needed a partner, someone brilliant with business strategy. He asked Elle. She said yes, not because she'd forgiven him, but because she was tired of being a victim in her own story. They worked together, built something from nothing, and slowly, so slowly, Elle started to heal. She didn't love Tavian, not yet, maybe not ever, but she trusted him in small ways. Trusted that when he said he'd be at a meeting, he'd be there. Trusted that he'd listen when she spoke. Trusted that he saw her as more than a prize or a liability. Just her. and Tavian groveled in every way that mattered. He never pushed, never demanded forgiveness. He showed up, did the work, respected her boundaries. When she had panic attacks, remnants of the trauma, he sat with her until she could breathe again, never touching unless she reached for him first. When she doubted herself, he reminded her she'd built half their company. When she cried over the baby she'd lost, that's when everything changed. Then she told him the truth she'd never told anyone. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. 1 year after the gala. Elle and Tavian were in the office late, reviewing contracts. She'd been quiet all day, distant in a way that made Tavian nervous. Elle, you okay? She looked up, and her eyes were distant, haunted. I was pregnant. Tavian's pen stopped moving. What? The night of the gala, I was 8 weeks pregnant. The world tilted. Everything shifted. I'd taken the test that morning. I was going to tell him that night. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought maybe a baby would fix us. Elle, I lost it 3 days later. The stress, the heartbreak, my body just gave up. Tears streamed down her face. I was in the hospital alone, bleeding, losing the only piece of him that still loved me. Tavian couldn't breathe. The full weight of what Caleum had done crashed over him. I never told him, never told anyone, because I didn't want him to know that his cruelty killed his own child. God, Elle, his voice broke. I'm so sorry. It wasn't your fault. I was part of it. I helped him hurt you. She shook her head. You tried to stop him. You told me that, and I believe you. But I didn't try hard enough. Maybe not, but you're trying now. She reached across the desk and took his hand, the first time she'd willingly touched him since the gala. I don't know if I'll ever love you the way you love me, she said quietly. But I'm willing to try, if you're willing to be patient. Tavian brought her hand to his lips, gently, reverently. I'll wait forever. Don't. She almost smiled. Forever's too long. Give me a year. Done. And for the first time since the gala, Elle felt something other than pain. She felt hope. Small and fragile, but real. And that was when Caleum learned what he'd really done. Caleum found out by accident. He'd hired investigators to follow Elowen, even after the divorce, even after she'd made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him. The obsession hadn't died. It had just changed form. The report landed on his desk 16 months after the gala. Subject, Caelum Roth. Now Elowen Thorne. Medical records. He almost didn't open it. But curiosity, or maybe masochism, won. He read 3 lines. Then his world ended. Subject was admitted to St. Mary's Hospital on November 15th. Diagnosis: miscarriage. Gestational age: 8 weeks, 4 days. Patient arrived alone, distressed. Noted significant emotional trauma as contributing factor. November 15th. 3 days after the gala. 3 days after he'd humiliated her in front of 500 people. 3 days after he'd served her divorce papers and called her a failure. She'd been pregnant with his child, and she'd lost the baby because of what he'd done. Caleum vomited into his trash can, and he sat on his office floor, the report clutched in his shaking hands, and wept. Not the quiet tears of regret, but the broken, howling grief of a man who'd destroyed everything that mattered. He'd killed his own child, with suspicion, with cruelty, with a test that should never have happened. He called his lawyer. I need to see her. Mr. Roth, the divorce is finalized. I need to see her, now. She won't agree. Tell her I know about the baby. Silence on the other end. Sir, what baby? Just tell her. The truth finally stood between them. Elle agreed to meet him, not out of kindness, but because she wanted to see his face when he realized what he'd destroyed. She wanted him to carry the weight she'd been carrying alone. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Manhattan. Caleum arrived first, looking like he'd aged a decade. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes were hollow, haunted. Elle walked in wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, hair in a simple braid. She looked free, and it broke him. "Thank you for coming," he said. She sat across from him, ordered nothing. "You have 10 minutes. I know about the baby." Elle's face didn't change. "Of course you do. You've been having me followed. I didn't know that I was pregnant when you destroyed me on our anniversary." "No, you didn't." Her voice was eerily calm. "You were too busy proving a point to notice I've been sick every morning. Too paranoid to see that I'd scheduled a doctor's appointment. Elowen, it's Elle. Elle, please, I'm so sorry." She laughed bitterly. "You're sorry you killed your own child with your cruelty?" The words landed like bullets, each one finding its mark. Caleum's hands shook. "I didn't know. Would it have mattered?" She leaned forward. "If I'd told you that night, would you have believed the baby was yours? Or would you have accused me of trying to trap you?" Silence. Because they both knew the answer. He would have demanded a paternity test, would have seen it as more proof of her deception. "I loved you," Elle said softly. "I loved you so much it hurt. And you looked at me like I was a con artist. I was poisoned by your own fear, your own insecurity." She stood. "Nobody did this to you, Caleum. You did it to yourself. I want to make this right. You can't. Please, there's nothing left to fix. You didn't just break my heart. You killed the future we could have had." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "And I will never forgive you for that." She turned to leave. "I love you." His voice cracked. "I still love you." She looked back, and for a moment, he saw the girl he'd married, the one who'd believed in him. "I know," she said, "and that's your punishment. You'll love me for the rest of your life, knowing I'll never love you back." She walked out, and Caleum sat in that coffee shop, surrounded by strangers, and wept. This time, his apologies weren't enough. Caleum tried everything. He sent flowers. Elle donated them to hospitals. He sent letters. Elle returned them unopened. He showed up at her office. Security escorted him out. He went public with an apology, buying full-page ads in major newspapers. "I destroyed the woman I loved with paranoia and cruelty. Elowen, I'm sorry. I will spend the rest of my life regretting what I did to you." Elle's response was a single interview. "Some betrayals are unforgivable. Some wounds don't heal. I wish him well, but I've moved on." Caleum donated $50 million to women's shelters in her name. Elle donated $50 million to mental health services in his, with a note, "For the therapy you clearly need." He tried to sabotage Blackwell Innovations, spread rumors, pulled strings with investors, but Tavian and Elle had built something too strong to break. Every attack made them more determined. Every obstacle they overcame together. And slowly, Caleum realized he'd lost. Not just Elle, but the war he'd started. She was finally choosing herself. 18 months after the gala, Blackwell Innovations became a billion-dollar company. Elle was the COO. Tavian was the CEO. And they were something. Not quite lovers, not quite friends, but partners in every way that mattered. Tavian had kept his promise. He'd waited, been patient, never pushed. And slowly, Elle's walls came down. She let him hold her hand during late-night work sessions, let him kiss her forehead when she was tired. Let him into her life in small, careful increments. And then one night, 2 years after the gala, Elle looked at Tavian across their shared office. "I'm ready." Ready for what? To try, really try, with you. Tavian's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "No." She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen in years. "But I'm willing to find out." He crossed the room, cupped her face in his hands. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning this." "I know." And he kissed her. Soft and reverent and full of promise. It wasn't fireworks. It was something better. It was real, built on honesty and patience and work, on groveling and forgiveness and second chances earned, not demanded. The life he lost was now someone else's forever. 3 years after the gala, Elle and Tavian got married. Small ceremony, close friends only. On a beach in Maine, far from the city where they'd all been broken. Elle wore a simple white dress. Tavian wore a suit the color of storm clouds. And when they said their vows, there wasn't a dry eye in attendance. "I promise to never lie to you again," Tavian said, voice shaking. "To earn your trust every single day. To be worthy of the second chance you've given me." Elle's vows were simpler. "I promise to let you in, to trust again, to build something new from the pieces of what we were." They kissed as husband and wife, and the small crowd erupted in applause. Caleum found out from social media a photo of Elle in a simple white dress, laughing as Tavian spun her around. She looked radiant, free, happy in a way she'd never been with Caleum. The caption was from Tavian's account. "I don't deserve her, but I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the trust she's given me. Here's to building something real." Caleum stared at that photo for hours and realized he'd lost. Not just the battle, but the war. Elle had moved on, built a life, found love with a man who'd groveled, worked, and changed to be worthy of her, while Caleum had lost everything, trying to protect what he'd never trusted in the first place. Time did what love couldn't. Caelum Roth still ran Roth Tech, but it wasn't the empire it had been. Investors were wary. Partners were scarce. His reputation never recovered. He lived alone in that penthouse, surrounded by wealth that meant nothing. He dated occasionally, sophisticated women who understood the rules, but every woman was a pale shadow of Elle. Every relationship ended the same way, with Caleum sabotaging it through suspicion and fear. The poison never left. He'd just learned to live with it. His therapist asked him once, "What would you say to her if you could?" "That I'm sorry, that she was right, that I destroyed the only real thing in my life because I was too broken to believe in it." "And if she forgave you?" Caleum smiled sadly. "She won't, and she shouldn't." Elle and Tavian thrived. Blackwell Innovations expanded globally. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, named Hope and Justice, because Elle believed in both again. Elle never forgot the baby she'd lost. There was a small memorial in their garden, a stone with an inscription, "For the child we never knew. You are loved." But she'd learned to carry the grief without letting it define her. And Tavian? He proved every day that trust could be rebuilt, that love, when nurtured with patience and honesty, could survive even the worst betrayals. Not because he was perfect, but because he never stopped trying. On their 5th anniversary, Tavian woke Elle with coffee and flowers. 5 years, he said. "Think you can handle 5 more?" She pulled him down for a kiss. Ask me again in 5 years. That's not a no. It's never been a no. Not with you. And Elle meant it. Because Tavian had done something Caleum never could. He'd earned her trust back, one day at a time. One truth at a time. One gentle act at a time, until she believed again. Some endings don't come with closure. The last time Caleum saw Elle was at a tech conference, 5 years after their divorce. She was on stage, delivering a keynote, building trust in the digital age. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was brilliant and confident and entirely herself, spoke about vulnerability and second chances and the courage it takes to believe in people again. She didn't see him in the audience, but he saw her, and he understood. She hadn't just survived him, she'd transcended him, built a life so full and beautiful that his cruelty was nothing but a distant memory. A scar, maybe, but not a wound. After her speech, Caleum did something he hadn't planned. He waited by her car. When she emerged, surrounded by admirers, their eyes met. For just a moment. She stopped, said something to her assistant, and walked over. Caleum. Elle. They stood there, two people who'd once promised forever. That was a good speech, he said. Thank you. Silence. I'm glad you're happy, Caleum said finally. You deserve it. Elle studied him, saw the broken man he'd become, and felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, just the quiet neutrality of someone who'd moved on. I hope you find peace, she said. Not forgiveness, just hope. I won't, but I appreciate the sentiment. She nodded, started to leave. Elle, she turned back. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. Does it matter? She considered the question. It matters that you mean it, but it doesn't change anything. And she left, climbed into her car where Tavian waited, their children in the back seat. Caleum watched them drive away. A family he could have had, a life he'd destroyed, and realized the cruelest truth of all. Elle didn't hate him. She didn't think about him at all. He'd become irrelevant to the story of her life. A cautionary tale, a chapter she'd closed. And that, Caleum learned, was the deepest pain of all. Not being hated, but being forgotten. And this is what was left when everything else was gone. Trust is like a mirror. You can't scratch it to see if it breaks, because the moment you do, you've already ruined the reflection. Caelum Roth learned that too late. He'd tested the mirror, scratched it deliberately, and destroyed the only reflection that had ever shown him love. Tavian Blackwell had cracked the mirror, but he'd spent years carefully piecing it back together, fragment by fragment, until it showed something new. Not perfection, but truth. And Elle learned she didn't need a mirror to see her worth. She was enough. Broken, healed, scarred, and strong. Enough. Some nights, when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Tavian would find her in the garden, by the memorial stone. He never asked if she was thinking about the baby. He just sat beside her, held her hand, and waited. Because that's what love was. Not grand gestures, but showing up, again and again, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And Elle would lean her head on his shoulder and whisper, "Thank you." For what? For proving that some things can be fixed, that some people are worth the risk. You're worth everything, Tavian said, and he meant it. Every single word. The end. If you could go back and warn one person in this story what was about to happen, who would you choose and why? Tell me in the comments. And if these stories hit you in places real life never warns you about, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one is even more devastating.